Hi everyone, welcome to the second video for today. This one will be just about the narrative paper and introduction to it, also the rubric for the whole course and for the narrative paper in particular, and just what is a narrative paper, the conventions of it. So, like the first video explained, this paper will be due, your first draft of it will be due Friday by 11:59 p.m. on eCampus. So, it's really fast-paced, and I would start brainstorming and thinking about what you want to write now. So on our homepage, which is this again, you'll find details about the narrative paper or under coursework. And if you go to papers, it's the only unit that's open currently. And here are all the details for this first unit. For today, we're only going to worry about really these forms, these four here, just these three. So I already have them pulled up down here, but again, all you do is just click on them and then they will either show up in your browser or you go to your download to open those. Let's look at the assignment sheet first. So each one of these will have the same format, each assignment sheet. You guys can read through this. I'm going to breeze through the things that are the most important for this paper. The narrative paper, at the heart of it, is basically a story about yourself. So the difference between a story and a narrative is a narrative is comprised of multiple stories. Okay? So when you're telling a story, it's just one thing, one event, one memory. The main thing to remember is one. A narrative is normally 3 to 5 stories. So we'll look at structuring and just how you start brainstorming for a narrative and what its purposes are. So it's to inform the reader of something that happened in your life. It's a personal literary narrative. Okay? So that's the genre. The audience is technically just me, but this might be something that's published on something like BuzzFeed or in a less formal type of journal. The organization, I have created an outline for you guys. We'll take a look at that in this video. I feel like it helps students really adjust to this new type of writing. It's often not what you've had in high school or in other college classes. The narrative is a lot more in sync with creative writing. So the main vocabulary that I'll use for this paper is showing versus telling. We'll have 2 days on this. That's tomorrow and Wednesday. But your main goal for today is start thinking about a theme. And a theme could be something important to your life, but it cannot be change or identity as a giant concept. A theme might be loss of childhood, or like a time that you failed in your life, but then you learned something from it. We'll look at a sample paper tomorrow as part of your homework so you can get a better sense of what a narrative paper actually is. Once you have some sort of theme in mind, again, I've read a lot of sports papers, I've read a lot of people who were trying to find their major, trying to choose a school, etc. Something that basically, what I tell my class is something that matters to you. I don't want to read 16 papers that just say I chose college because mom and dad wanted me to go. The main thing is I want to read something that matters to you, and often they produce better papers when you care about what you're writing about. So after you have your theme, again, something you care about, it's kind of a nebulous concept, but then you'll start choosing stories, or 3 moments, or scenes. Those are all the same thing. So what I mean by that is 3 to 5, and these will be your body paragraphs, things that demonstrate your theme. So one girl wrote a paper last semester over how she loved making people laugh, and like laughter was her theme. And she chose 3 really kind of, quote, dumb blonde moments where she didn't understand Laffy Taffy jokes. And she told a moment where she was in a car with a group of friends and family, and they were reading Laffy Taffy jokes, and she was just befuddled and couldn't understand it. And she really used sensory details to show the scene to the reader, rather than just to say she didn't understand, and that was funny to the other people. Okay, we'll talk a lot about this. This is the heart of the paper. The angle, don't worry too much about this, but basically specifics. So again, identity and change are not good themes. Everyone has that. Everyone's going through an identity crisis or a change when they enter college. So make it more specific than that. The assessment we'll go through in just a second. There's a separate rubric for that. This paper should be 1,200 to 1,500 words. And this, I'm going to stick to word count rather than pages because I know all the cheat rules about how to flub your pages. Don't do that. It's an online class. It's harder to get away with. So here's the formatting. Again, like the first video mentioned, .doc, .docx, .pdf format, not pages, 12-point font, 1-inch margins, double-spaced, etc. Okay. You will not be doing research for this paper, so don't worry about research conventions just yet. We will talk about that in the next 2 units. The feedback form. This is the rubric. Okay. So the rubric is roughly 3 pages. This is exactly what I will return to you after this weekend. Actually, I'll get all your papers Friday at 11:59 p.m. and then this weekend I will start going through them and I will fill out this form and then email it back to you individually. So you can read these columns up here. Basically, a professional means it's ready to go into the final portfolio. It's nearly perfect. Okay, so if you get a professional, you don't really want to change any of the things. Discussion is an okay. Focus or revision is a main problem, and then this is, if it's not done, then obviously you need to complete it. Titles. We'll talk about those. I'll have a specific video on those. Introduction, hook, all of this stuff we will get to in the upcoming videos. Don't worry about the reflective cover memos for this, okay? But everything else you can look at, and showing versus telling is vivid description, that scene language. Then I'll type a couple of notes here, 2 or 3 big things that I think you should revise for your final portfolio or your midterm. Okay, so that's the rubric. Now let's take a look at the outline, which is this form here, but again, I already have it pulled up. And you do not need to fill this out. It is only here to help you. So the narrative paper outline, essentially, again, a narrative paper is a story about stories. Okay, so choose something that matters to you. If someone said, what's one of the most important things that's happened in your life? How would you respond to them? What would you say? What you would say is basically your theme. Some people talk about depression, but some people talk about how they wrestled in high school. So it really just depends on what you want. We will not be doing a peer review for this, so it will be private, but don't feel like you have to spill your guts to me, okay? It's whatever you're comfortable with writing. So we have basically 3 parts: the introduction, the body, which are your stories, and your conclusion. It's basically a 5-paragraph essay, only a little bit fancier. So a hook. A hook is the opening line of your paper. This is the thing that you want that readers are going to read first. There are 5 types of hooks. We'll get into that a little bit later on our introduction day, but you might open with a quote that is relevant to your stories. You might open with a really strong statement, or a question is often useful for narrative papers. The formality of these papers is not as strict as a research paper, so you should use first person. You should use I, my, we, our. It's your life, so I don't want to read a story about how Mark, if you're referring to Mark in third person, that just seems weird, okay? Avoid the use of second person. That's you, your. And that's only because technically when you use second person, you're not talking to me specifically. You're talking to a general audience. So just say people or reader or whatever, who you're specifically referring to. Okay, so those are a couple of hooks. Your theme or your topic, again here, it might not be super specific at this stage in the paper, aka your like kind of thesis statement, but it should mention kind of what you're going to talk about in the paper. The bodies. So this is really where the heart of the paper is, but also kind of what I'm looking for the most. So each one of these should be a separate story in your life, and it should be a moment. So what I mean by a moment is not like a resume of details. It should be like if you're sitting on a park bench and you're watching a child play hopscotch, or you're watching a child hopscotch. What is happening with the lighting? What's happening with the smells? What do you see? What do you hear? Do you hear giggling? Do you see a leaf blow by? What color is the leaf? Is it crisp? What season is it? What time is it? Who are you with? All of this should come from something you have already lived. So you're doing the research basically in your mind already. So all of these, story 1, 2, and 3, and you can have more than 3 stories, but I'd say 3 is a good minimum to reach that word count. Think about what happens, the descriptions of the story, the 5 senses, and then the second part is, why is it important to your theme? What did you learn from that moment? What did it teach you? Anyone can sit on a park bench, but very few of us have some sort of importance or revelation with it. Okay? I know it sounds kind of hokey and it sounds fluffy, but showing versus telling is a real skill that helps students outside of the English field, especially with personal statements, job applications. It will help you in 102. It will help with, it's a form of close reading. And close reading helps with detail-oriented tasks. So a lot of engineers can benefit from this as well. Believe it or not, you might be smirking, but I guarantee you that by the end of this class, you will hopefully agree with me. So stories 1, 2, and 3, all different scenes, relate them back to the introduction, aka the theme. Your conclusion really should talk about the resolution or change that you've arrived at. How did these 3 instances that relate to a larger theme influence you or change you? Did you take 3 failures throughout your life, and did you learn something from those 3 failures? Did you, the sample paper we're going to read talks about 3 moments of lost childhood, where the author was trying to regain a sense of freedom, childhood, innocence, but he couldn't. And ultimately, the resolution that he arrived at is growing up is difficult, but he somehow found a way to maintain that childhood wonder in his adult life. So that will be the sample paper you will read for this week. Okay, so that's essentially the narrative paper. The hardest part is that getting that theme and also thinking of these 3 stories. Showing versus telling, like I said, we'll have 2 days on, and then actually another day in Unit 3 when we get to the last paper. So this is a pretty important skill. It's hard to master, but the 5 senses is really what you have to think about. And you might even create a list when you have a story in mind. What did I see? What did I smell? What did I taste even? If you're eating ice cream with your sister, brother, whoever. Yeah, so really dig deep into the memory, and this is a personal narrative. It should be about you. It's not a story about your father or your brother or your coach or whoever. It's about your life, something that influenced you. We'll get out, if it makes you feel uncomfortable, you don't have to get really personal. We'll get out of the realm of the narrative soon by the end of this week, and we'll get into research. So really take time to kind of enjoy just writing about yourself, not needing to do research, thinking about memory, something pleasant, something unpleasant, whatever you want, okay? If you need more direction with this, please email me. Again, I'm going to post 2 more videos about the narrative. It's a really good way to start this course, and the syllabus, let's see if I can get to that real quick. So the syllabus instructs you guys to read the sample narrative for tomorrow, because I will be talking a lot about that, and then we'll do a brief introduction to rhetoric and pact, okay? So you will have a free write tomorrow. I will comment on your free writes, and other than that, you've pretty much done your homework for today. Start thinking about that theme and start thinking about those 3 stories.